Hey everybody, I see I have one person joining. Just give me a second and I'll start saying what I have to say. You done know. Oh, hey Christine, bless up my girl. So what I want to talk about here today, I guess who misses the intro will miss it. There is too much blatant racism going on and anti black hate and anti black racism going on in Canada. And a lot of times we point our fingers down south to Alabama and Mississippi and those places. But you know what I want to say really and truly? That the racism in Canada is far more prevalent here in Canada than it is in the US. Of course, people in the US, they have their issues and what have you, but I'm going to tell you a story today you don't know. Bless up, Miss Christine. Big up yourself. How do you walk into a Canadian restaurant? Chipotle, Canada. You walk into a restaurant with your money, non-violently, simply to buy something to eat for your grandchild, and they can refuse to serve you. And the irony of it is that they label any non white person as visible minority. And this racism is happening from somebody who is identified as visible minority just as much as Black Canadians are. A lady walks in to Chipotle, Canada, on Hurontario and Eglinton in the Peel region of Ontario with a cane, notices that they are not giving her the value or the portion of food of which she is paying for. Bless up, Rodney. And then has the nerve to tell the co-worker, don't serve her. What is that? That's worse than down south in the US of A. We can no longer point our fingers and be under disillusion that these kind of things only happens in the US when it's happening right here in Canada. And this is why I represent Black People United for Change. Hey, Summer Rain. Because if Black people don't unite together and not just say, oh, well, it's not me, it's not my circus, it's not my monkeys, then these things will continue on and on and on for many generations to come. You know what I'm saying? If this restaurant felt that they were in any imminent danger, or that this lady, Black lady with a cane, a grandmother, a mother, somebody who contributes positively to the Black community here in Ontario, if she said or did something that was a violation against the law, then these people would have been within their rights, their constitutional rights as per legislation to call the police and have her removed. But what they did was something worse because they know she didn't break the law. They refused to serve her. So they're visible minorities are bringing back Jim Crow laws. Don't serve the Negro. Tell them to leave without just cause. And the sad thing about it is that my grandfather's grandfather and my grandmother's grandmother and their fathers and so on, we built North America. First, they came along and stole North America from the indigenous. And then they needed strong black people like black Africans, because whether we like it or not, we are all children and descendants from the motherland, brought us here to work and prosper up the land. And then what did they do? After we built it, they decided to bring in others to come and control it. Because rather than seeing us prosperous and owning all these franchises like Tim Hortons, Chipotle Canada, McDonald's, and all of the other restaurant industries, big brand names are now being run by people who need AI to read and write and communicate. And we let that happen. You know how we let that happen? Because we do not band together. You saw what Rosa Parks did on that bus, and all them black people in Montgomery, Alabama. What did they do? When you know an establishment has zero respect from the ethnic group for which you belong, not just a couple of us, but all of us need to get together and boycott these people. Because every time another black person walks into another Chipotle Canada and gives them $1, it only makes them richer and us remain poor. We need to stop looking at each other, as Tupac said, as distant strangers. We are not the enemy. Our enemy is on the outside. And what is the best way to get to a person? You cut their pocket. But every Monday, we're going to see a bunch of black people lined up in the drive-thru at Tim Hortons or running into Chipotle, running into McDonald's, running into Wendy's, and only strengthening their power through financial gain. What we need to do is boycott. You see, and that's the beauty of it. You see, Black Americans, no matter what you want to say about them, they know how to unite. Every black person in Montgomery boycott the bus, they walk and they carpooled. And that is what we need to do. Because we cannot sit back and allow other visible minorities to now come and feel that they have the power to say they are not serving a black woman with a cane who didn't come in to beg, who had her money to pay. And according to the law and legislation here in Canada, because we are still a liberated country, we are allowed to speak. The incident that took place is on video. And that lady that disrespected another sister, she didn't look the least bit shook. As a matter of fact, she was enjoying the little bit of authority that she had in a fast food joint because her uncle or her father bought out the franchise and put her to work behind a counter. And that was her way of feeling big. You know how we can feel big? When we stop going in these establishments. They do not want us. They do not respect our money. To them, we're just another Igor walking in. Who cares? Just give them a little bit. Who really cares? And when are we going to stop accepting this? When are we going to stop accepting this treatment? We are no less human than anyone else out there. God doesn't make mistakes. As they have two eyes, we have two eyes. As they have a nose, we have a nose. As they have a brain, we have a brain, but we need to use it. We need to stop playing stagger league and work together as one people. So just imagine if a whole bunch of black folk across Ontario stopped going into Timmy's, stopped going into Chipotle, Canada, burn out KFC, let Burger King lose their crown. What will happen to them? You think they'll have all that authority? We need to stop letting people feel high up there because that's where we go to spend our money. Every other black person, and now I'm talking generally in North America, Pop Off on top, Tommy Hilfiger, Clark, Bally Boots, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, all of whom, if you go and do your research, are racist. Racist people. Part of the apartheid that kept Nelson Mandela locked up for practically 40 years. And we as his children and his generation our parents were screaming out, "Free Nelson Mandela." And we are freely wearing the clothes of these Africans. What does that make us? What does it make us to remain silent? Remember, the Miranda rights says you have the right to remain silent. It doesn't say you have to remain silent. And things like this needs to go viral, and we need to encourage each other to stop going into these food establishments. Because even if they say, come, we're going to give you a free meal to compensate for the humiliation and the dehumanization that my friend went through standing in Chipotle, Canada, in the Peel region, God only knows what they'll do to that food. Why do we go back? Why? We can cook. They hauled us all the way from the continent of Africa to feed for their white families. So why are we running into these food establishments? They no longer keep up with the health and safety code. They don't wear gloves. I encourage you to go over to Instagram and watch the live video on Christine Jackson's page on Instagram. You will see this disrespectful, racist little fellow visible minority was not even wearing a proper hairnet. So tell me why, my people, do we keep going in there? We don't have Stockholm Syndrome. They are showing us that they do not respect our money. So why give money to where you're not respected or even valued? Help me to make it make sense. I don't know what to say to get through to my people, but we need to rally around and come together and raise our voices against this systemic racism that now these newcomers, who are also visible minorities, come here and feel that they have so much over us that they could put an Igor in their place and say they're not getting served. What happened to Denny's in the US when they refused to serve a black person? Denny's is no more because we don't hear about Denny's. We need to do like our brothers and sisters across that border and start boycotting, like what Rosa Parks did. She said, "You want to put me in the back of that bus?" I'm not getting up from my seat. I paid for my seat on this bus. Threw her off, called police, blah, blah, blah. And they couldn't have accomplished the Civil Rights Act because of what Sister Rosa Parks did. That incited the March on Washington in 1963. It took a group of Black people coming together to chant out and burn down racism against Black people that the government, US government, Jim Crow, and Hoover had no choice but to pass the Civil Rights Act. We can do the same in Canada. We can get Carney's attention to pass a law that stops these kind of people from shoving us in a corner. And we need to stop going back for more. Them slaves who escaped off the plantation, you think they like getting whipped up in their back every day and picking cotton till their hands bled? No, they ran and they didn't go back. Some of the slaves captured from Africa said, I'd rather be in my grave than be a slave. We have the freedom now. We could finish that race, but we can't finish it divided. A house divided against itself will never, ever stand. And I'm reaching out to every Black Canadian right now. We need to stop going to Chipotle, Canada. It wasn't some young, reckless lady going into Chipotle today that's a next visible minority. Refugee had to say, you're not serving my sister. On what grounds? Because this is what they know they can get away with. Nobody is ever held accountable when it comes on to Black lives in Canada. And sadly, it is because of us, because we decide to live the Miranda Act day after day, because somebody once told you you have the right to remain silent. It's a right. It's not mandated that you have to remain silent. You know what they were expecting? For us to be you effing so and go on like trailer park trash, but that's not who we are. You fight them back, learn the law, and use the law as your weapon. Don't fight like this anymore. Fight with this. Fight together. Have you ever tried to throw a punch with okay, I'm not going to forget my thumb and my pinky finger. Let me sucker punch this person. You can't. The only way to create force is so together. Boom. That's why we bounce each other. This is a sign and an emblem of unity, not division. Because dividing, you're nothing but a petty little slap. But when we all come together, blang, power, impact, force, effect, you done know. Now you see that petition all over the place, and some of you Black Canadians scroll on by because you don't like Bubbles, or I don't want Bubbles to this. It's not about me. I'm not the only Black person living in Canada. But it's very few of us that actually care about the future of our kids. How long are we going to go on and continue saying, yes, sir, yes, ma'am? We need to be saying, what do you want? Let me check my calendar. That's where we should be right now. You saw the mayor of Toronto, and I could speak about it because she went public to tell Canadians not to shop at Home Depot because they pulled their sponsorship from the Pride Parade. So Olivia Chow, our also visible minority mayor, made an announcement on her social media platform telling other Canadians Don't shop at Home Depot because they pulled their sponsorship of the Pride Festival. After Shiloh hit the jackpot, after classifying a baby, because anyone under 5 is a baby, after classifying a little boy, a baby boy, who has autism as an N-word and this and that and rate-tay, supremacist, and possibly some house Negroes turned her into a millionaire overnight. And then some supremacist Canadians went to the exhibition place at the CNE, masked themselves up like the cowards that they are, and chanted DEI ruins countries, mass deportation. And who do you think them slurs were directed at? Not the other members of visible minority groups, us, Black people. I want you to know the same mayor that went vocal and risked a lawsuit for defamation of character to Home Depot sits on the board of the CNE and exhibition place and mummified herself. Didn't have nothing to say. No accountability. That how can a group of white supremacists not get caught chanting down diversity, equity, and inclusion when there's a police satellite right there? What does that tell you about where we rank? And you want to fight each other? You don't think that we should use our rights, the law, and our brains and fight back now? That now we turn into the southern states back in the 60s where they're not serving Negroes? Anyone who wants to disillusion themselves and say the basis of that was not racism, go and watch Alex Haley's Roots. Go and watch Alex Haley's Queen. Go and watch those movies, 12 Years a Slave. If you do not know what racism is, if you want to say, oh, Canada's not like Canada, is very much like them. Only difference is they're not loud and boisterous. They're quiet. They bury it. They do it and then they bury it. But now these other newly arrived visible minority people, they come and they're getting loud and stink with it. Then we need to get loud too and fight back. And I deplore of you guys, I implore you to stop going into Chipotle Canada. Let's see how, if they disrespect the black dollar, then let them live without that black dollar. Because I want to tell you this, there is no all black owned Tim Hortons as much as there is all Southern Asian owned Tim Hortons. They have taken over because they had the green light to do it. I'm going to share something with you before I cut this tape, yo. There is something called the Employment Equity Act. Each business, each employer, each establishment has a quota to fill as to how many visible minority employees they have to hire. If they don't hire a certain amount of visible minorities, their business could get shut down. They're in violation of the Employment Equity Act. So what do? They will hire their visible minorities and then some. How many black people are serving you at Service Ontario? How many black people do you see answering the CRA call center phone? How many times do you have to repeat yourself because the people who are there to serve the public who didn't have to ensure that they're fluent in English. That's them filling their visible minority quota, but not with a black face though. You know where they fill their visible minority quota? In the prisons, in the jails, in mental institutions, in the welfare office. That is where they take us and fill those quotas. In the colleges, no blacks. What do? They use pressure to break you down mentally so that you either quit or you break out or lash out. And so they say, I told you there's some wild eagles from the jungle. Well, we have to change strategy now. We have to change sides. Because I want to tell you, it doesn't matter where you work or how much seniority and authority you think you have. If they could disrespect a black immigration officer, look what they did to Stacy Clark, the police superintendent that they dismissed because she knew that they were being biased and racist in the Toronto police force. So she braved it out and helped out her brothers to pass them evaluations that they make impossible for a black man and a black woman to pass. I'm asking you now, do you not notice how many visible minorities are now on the police force, especially here in Toronto? I'm like, Dad, where are the white ones? Because they're filling their quota to keep the law. But they're making sure that anyone like me, and anyone like you is not included in that quota. And we need to stop. We need to stop fighting each other, for God's sake. When will we learn? When are you going to see? When is our black MPs going to realize, gee, I'm going to start pushing my people through now? What do we do as a people? When one black man gets through the door and they see another black brother or sister coming up, what do we tell ourselves? I'm going to speak my mother's dialect now. Where them I go? What she a do? And they cut that corporate ladder. What do the other visible minorities do? Come, I'll put your application on the desk. And then it used to be 1, then 2, then 3, and all of a sudden, we smell butter chicken in the cafeteria and masala. No more burgers. That's what happens. And we only have ourselves to blame. You don't know. And I hope I got through to even one person. They disrespected a black woman with a cane today, whose only crime not to be served is because they were giving her less than a kid-sized meal portion. That means that she was buying that food for her little black grandchild, and they decided to shortchange a little kid. How long are we gonna stand aside and look, as per Bob Marley said? You don't know. I gotta go. Um, Gotta end this live. Sorry, people. Help me end the live, ma.